The smoke stung my eyes, mirroring the burning ache in my chest. 30 years of memories, reduced to ash and twisted metal. They stood across the street, silhouetted against the flashing lights of the arriving fire trucks, their faces obscured by the gloom, but their triumphant smiles, those I saw clear as day. They thought they had finally extinguished the flame, silenced the old woman who dared to stand in their way. But they were wrong. If you have ever felt the warmth of your grandmother's embrace, subscribe now. My name is Sarah, and for most of my life, I poured my heart and soul into a small diner just off Route 66. It wasn't fancy, just a simple place with checkered floors, vinyl booths worn smooth with time, and a menu filled with comfort food passed down from my mother. In 1992, a brutal winter storm swept through, leaving travelers stranded and desperate. That's when they came into my life, a young couple, barely out of their teens, shivering and penniless. Their names were Mark and Emily. I didn't hesitate. I offered them hot meals, warm blankets, and a place to sleep right there in the diner, setting up cots in the back storage room. They were grateful, showering me with thanks and promises to repay my kindness someday. Mark, with his easy smile and strong hands, even helped me fix a leaky faucet. Emily, quiet and shy, would help clear tables and chat with the regulars. They felt like family, a temporary addition to my quiet, solitary life. I trusted them implicitly, sharing stories of my dreams for the diner, my late husband, my struggles to keep the business afloat. They listened intently, their eyes filled with what I believed was genuine empathy. For weeks, they were a fixture in my life, a welcome distraction from the loneliness that often crept in after closing time. When the storm finally subsided and the roads cleared, they prepared to leave. They promised to stay in touch, to visit whenever they could. I waved goodbye, feeling a pang of sadness as they drove off, but confident that our paths would cross again. Years turned into decades. The promised visits never materialized. Occasional postcards arrived, filled with generic greetings and vague updates about their lives. I understood. People move on. Life gets busy. But I never forgot their faces, their gratitude, the warmth I felt when they were under my roof. The diner remained my constant, my anchor. It weathered economic downturns, changing tastes, and the relentless march of time. I watched families grow up within its walls, celebrating birthdays, graduations, and countless other milestones. The diner was more than just a business, it was a community, a haven, a part of my soul. But time takes its toll. The long hours, the constant pressure, the physical strain, it all began to wear me down. I made the difficult decision to close the diner, to finally retire and take some time for myself. The last day was supposed to be a celebration, a farewell party filled with laughter, memories, and the comforting aroma of home-cooked meals. The community poured in, sharing stories, offering well wishes, and shedding a few tears. It was bittersweet, a poignant reminder of the impact the diner had on so many lives. Then, as the sun began to set, they walked in. Mark and Emily. 30 years had etched lines on their faces, silvered their hair, but I recognized them instantly. A flicker of warmth ignited within me, a foolish hope that perhaps they had finally come to repay their debt, to offer their gratitude in person. But that warmth quickly turned to ice as I saw the cold calculation in their eyes, the cruel twist of their lips. They weren't here to reminisce. They were here to finish something. They revealed their true colors, a darkness I never could have imagined. They had been plotting this for years. Waiting. Watching. They claimed they had invested in a rival business years ago, a sleek, modern restaurant just a few blocks away. My little diner, with its old-fashioned charm and loyal customers, was an obstacle to their success. They had waited patiently, biding their time until I was vulnerable, until I was ready to close my doors. Then, they would swoop in and acquire the property, demolish the diner, and build a parking lot for their upscale establishment. The casualness of their cruelty chilled me to the bone. I had opened my heart and home to them, and they repaid me with calculated treachery. I tried to reason with them, to remind them of the kindness I had shown them, but their eyes were devoid of emotion. They were driven by greed, blinded by ambition. They presented me with a contract, a legal document filled with jargon and loopholes, offering a pittance for the property, far below its market value. They gave me 24 hours to sign. Or things might get difficult, Mark said, his voice laced with a menacing undertone. Emily stood silently beside him, her gaze fixed on the floor, a ghost of her former self. I refused, of course. I wouldn't be bullied, not after all these years. The diner was my legacy, my life's work. I wouldn't let them erase it for the sake of their profit margin. The next few weeks were a living nightmare. The harassment started subtly, late-night phone calls, anonymous threats, negative reviews appearing online, falsely accusing my diner of health code violations. Then, it escalated. My windows were smashed, graffiti was spray-painted on the walls, a group of rowdy individuals started showing up during peak hours, causing disturbances and driving away customers. I called the police, but they could do little without concrete evidence. Mark and Emily were careful, always operating in the shadows, using proxies and intermediaries to carry out their dirty work. The stress was unbearable. Sleepless nights were spent staring at the ceiling, replaying the events in my mind, searching for a way out. The diner, once a source of joy and pride, became a battleground, a symbol of my struggle against their relentless assault. My health began to suffer. My appetite vanished, replaced by a constant knot of anxiety in my stomach. My doctor warned me to slow down, to take care of myself, but how could I when everything I had worked for was on the line? I tried to fight back, hiring a lawyer, gathering evidence, rallying the community for support. But Mark and Emily were always one step ahead, using their resources and connections to undermine my efforts. The lawyer informed me that the contract they presented was airtight, filled with clauses designed to protect their interests. The community, while sympathetic, was powerless against their relentless campaign of intimidation. I felt isolated, vulnerable, and increasingly desperate. The weight of injustice was crushing me. They were slowly, methodically dismantling my life, piece by piece. I considered giving up, surrendering to their demands, but the thought of them winning, of them erasing my legacy, was unbearable. I had to find a way to fight back, to expose their true nature, to reclaim what was rightfully mine. But how could I, an old woman with limited resources, possibly defeat two ruthless individuals who were determined to destroy me? The answer, I realized, lay in their arrogance, in their belief that they were untouchable. They had underestimated me, dismissed me as a harmless old woman. That was their mistake. The day I received the notice, the diner was to be condemned due to structural safety concerns. The inspector, a man I had known for years, wouldn't meet my eyes. The fix was in. The notice was plastered to the front door, an official decree condemning my diner, declaring it structurally unsound, a danger to the community. The words blurred through a film of tears, each syllable a hammer blow to my already shattered spirit. The inspector, Tom, a man who'd eaten countless breakfasts at my counter, a man who'd shared stories of his kids and grandkids, wouldn't meet my eyes as he delivered the news. He mumbled something about regulations, about safety concerns, about how his hands were tied. I knew the fix was in. Mark and Emily had pulled strings, greased palms, used their influence to twist the system to their advantage. This wasn't about safety, it was about control. About power. About erasing me. I stumbled inside, the familiar scent of coffee and frying bacon now a cruel mockery of happier times. The checkered floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet, the vinyl booths pressed in on me, the walls closing in like a suffocating tomb. I sank into my usual spot at the counter, the cold, hard surface a stark contrast to the warmth I usually found in this place. 30 years. 30 years of memories, of laughter, of tears, all about to be reduced to rubble. I picked up a coffee cup, my hand trembling so violently that the liquid sloshed over the rim, staining the worn formica. My vision blurred, not just from the tears, but from a wave of pure, unadulterated rage. The glass in my hand shattered, shards digging into my palm, a sharp, stinging pain that barely registered against the dull ache in my chest. This was it. Rock bottom. They had taken everything. My business. My livelihood. My peace of mind. They had stripped me bare, leaving me broken and defeated. They wanted me gone, silenced, erased from existence. And for a moment, a dark, insidious thought crept into my mind. Maybe they were right. Maybe it was time to give up, to surrender to their relentless assault. To simply walk away and let them have their victory. The darkness was tempting, a seductive whisper promising an end to the pain, the struggle, the constant fear. I closed my eyes, the image of Mark and Emily's triumphant smiles seared into my retinas. Their faces, contorted with greed and malice, fueled a flicker of something deep within me, a spark that refused to be extinguished. No. I wouldn't let them win. I wouldn't let them break me. I wouldn't let them steal my legacy. They may have taken everything else, but they wouldn't take my spirit. Not without a fight. The crimson trickled down my hand, a stark reminder of the battle I was in. I stood up, my legs shaky but my resolve firm. The diner may be condemned, but it wasn't dead yet. And neither was I. I walked to the back office, the small, cluttered space where I had spent countless hours poring over bills, planning menus, and dreaming of the future. I opened the old metal filing cabinet, its hinges groaning in protest, and pulled out a dusty box filled with old photographs, newspaper clippings, and legal documents. Memories flooded back, each one a testament to the life I had built, the community I had nurtured. I sifted through the contents, my fingers tracing the faded images of smiling faces, the yellowed pages of local newspapers, the meticulously kept records of every transaction, every success, every setback. As I dug deeper, I came across a file I hadn't seen in years, a collection of documents related to Mark and Emily's stay at the diner all those years ago. Their initial application for assistance, their signed statements of gratitude, copies of their driver's licenses, even a handwritten note from Emily thanking me for my kindness. I studied their faces in the old photos, their young, innocent eyes filled with what I had believed was genuine appreciation. Now, those eyes seemed to mock me, their innocence a carefully constructed facade. I felt a surge of anger, a burning desire to expose their deception, to reveal the truth about who they really were. But anger alone wouldn't be enough. I needed a plan. A strategy. A way to turn the tables on them, to use their own arrogance against them. I spent the rest of the night poring over the documents, searching for a weakness, a vulnerability, something I could use to my advantage. As the sun began to rise, painting the sky with hues of pink and orange, I found it. Buried deep within the fine print of an old business contract, a small, seemingly insignificant clause that could potentially unravel their entire scheme. It was a long shot, a risky gamble, but it was the only chance I had. A faint smile crept across my face, a cold, calculating smile that mirrored the darkness in their eyes. They thought they had won. They thought they had broken me. But they were wrong. The game had just begun. I was no longer the victim. I was the planner. And I was about to show them what happens when you underestimate an old woman with nothing left to lose. The diner might be burning, but from those ashes, revenge would be born. I started recording everything. They'd made a mistake. Now, I smiled, a thin, brittle thing that didn't reach my eyes. They thought they had broken me, pushed me to the edge. Let them think that. Let them believe they were dealing with a defeated old woman. Because while they were celebrating their victory, I was meticulously planning their downfall. The first step was documentation. I started recording everything. Every interaction, every threat, every subtle act of intimidation. I purchased a small, discreet camera, hiding it in my apron pocket, capturing their every move, every word, every fleeting expression. I knew their arrogance would be their weakness. They wouldn't suspect a thing. I played the part of the heartbroken, defeated woman, my shoulders slumped, my voice trembling, my eyes filled with tears. I let them see what they wanted to see, a pathetic old woman on the verge of giving up. All the while, the camera was running, silently collecting evidence, building a case against them. There were close calls, moments when I thought they might discover my secret. Emily, with her unnervingly sharp eyes, would occasionally stare at me a little too long, a flicker of suspicion in her gaze. Mark, with his booming voice and aggressive demeanor, would sometimes stand a little too close, his words dripping with menace. But I held my nerve, maintaining the facade of weakness, deflecting their suspicions with carefully crafted words and gestures. The hardest part was controlling my rage, suppressing the urge to lash out, to scream at them, to expose their treachery. But I knew that would be a mistake. I had to be patient, methodical, strategic. I had to wait for the right moment, the perfect opportunity to strike. I spent hours researching their business, digging into their past, searching for any hint of wrongdoing, any hidden skeletons in their closet. I hired a private investigator, a grizzled old man named Frank, who specialized in uncovering dirt on shady characters. Frank was expensive, but he was worth every penny. He had a network of contacts, a knack for finding information that others couldn't, and a complete disregard for the rules. He unearthed a treasure trove of information about Mark and Emily's past, revealing a pattern of deceit, manipulation, and financial impropriety. They had a history of taking advantage of people, of cutting corners, of bending the rules to suit their own selfish ends. They had left a trail of broken promises and ruined lives in their wake. The information Frank provided was invaluable, giving me the ammunition I needed to take them down. I also consulted with a lawyer, a sharp, ambitious young woman named Sarah, who understood the law inside and out. Sarah helped me navigate the complex legal landscape, identifying the specific laws and regulations they had violated, and outlining the steps I needed to take to hold them accountable. She was confident that we could win, but she warned me that it wouldn't be easy. Mark and Emily were powerful and well-connected. They would fight back with everything they had. I was ready for them. I knew this wouldn't be a simple matter. I was ready to go all the way. The key to my plan was the old business contract, the one with the seemingly insignificant clause that I had discovered buried in the fine print. The clause stipulated that any attempt to undermine or devalue my business through illegal or unethical means would automatically void the contract, giving me the right to sue for damages. Mark and Emily had clearly violated this clause by engaging in a campaign of harassment and intimidation designed to force me to sell the property for far less than it was worth. I had the evidence, the witnesses, and the legal expertise to prove it. The final piece of the puzzle was the condemnation notice, the official decree declaring my diner structurally unsound. This was the smoking gun, the irrefutable proof of their conspiracy. I contacted a forensic engineer, a specialist in building inspections and structural analysis, and asked him to examine the diner. He conducted a thorough assessment, scrutinizing every inch of the building, from the foundation to the roof. His conclusion was unequivocal: the diner was structurally sound. The condemnation notice was a fraud, a fabrication designed to justify their illegal takeover of my property. With all the evidence in place, I was ready to strike. I had spent weeks gathering information, building a case, and preparing for battle. Now, it was time to unleash my revenge. I carefully selected the day they were scheduled to begin demolition of the diner. It had to be perfect timing. The day they tried to erase me, I would expose their lies. The anticipation was almost unbearable, a mixture of fear, excitement, and righteous anger. I knew this was a risky gamble, that I was putting everything on the line. But I had come too far to back down now. I had a plan, the evidence, and most importantly, I had the burning desire for justice that fueled me forward. They had underestimated me, dismissed me as a harmless old woman. Now, they were about to learn the true meaning of regret. They thought they were so clever, so untouchable. But arrogance, I was about to prove, was a fatal flaw. My forensic engineer, a meticulous man named Davies, delivered his report. The diner was structurally sound. Davies even went further. He discovered that the structural issues noted in the condemnation notice were based on falsified data, and the inspector, Tom, had signed off on it. Tom was their pawn. I now had undeniable proof of Mark and Emily's conspiracy. They had bribed a public official and falsified documents to shut down my business. It was time to spring the trap. I knew I couldn't confront them directly. They would deny everything, destroy the evidence, and use their influence to silence me. I needed to lure them into a situation where they had no escape, where their lies would be exposed for all to see. I decided to use their greed against them. They craved my land, my diner, my legacy. I needed to make them believe that they were about to achieve their ultimate victory. I sent Mark and Emily a letter, a carefully worded message designed to play on their desires. In the letter, I informed them that I was ready to give up. The condemnation notice had broken me. I was tired of fighting, tired of the stress, tired of the constant harassment. I was willing to sell them the property at a reduced price, a fraction of its true value, just to be rid of it all. I even added a touch of vulnerability, a hint of desperation, to make the offer seem more genuine. I knew they wouldn't be able to resist. The offer was too good to pass up. They would see it as a sign of weakness, a confirmation of their victory. They would rush to close the deal, eager to seize the prize they had worked so hard to obtain. I scheduled a meeting with them at the diner, one last time, just before the demolition was scheduled to begin. I wanted them to savor their triumph, to revel in their victory, right before I pulled the rug out from under them. The diner was eerily quiet, stripped bare of its former vibrancy. The tables were overturned, the chairs were stacked against the walls, the floor was littered with debris. The air was thick with dust and the scent of decay. It felt like a tomb, a place of forgotten dreams and shattered hopes. I sat at my usual spot at the counter, the cold, hard surface a stark reminder of everything I had lost. But beneath the surface of despair, a fire of determination burned bright. They arrived promptly at the agreed-upon time, Mark and Emily, their faces beaming with self-satisfaction. They strolled in as if they owned the place, their eyes gleaming with triumph. They barely acknowledged me, their attention focused on the paperwork they carried, the final documents that would seal my fate. "Well, well, well," Mark said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Look who finally came to their senses." Emily smirked, her eyes cold and calculating. "It's about time, Agatha. You've caused us a lot of trouble." I forced a weak smile, pretending to be intimidated by their presence. "I just want it to be over," I said, my voice trembling slightly. I'm tired. They exchanged knowing glances, clearly pleased with my apparent surrender. All right, let's get this over with, Mark said, placing the documents on the counter. Sign here, here, and here. As they laid out the paperwork, I could see in their eyes that they believed they had already won. But there was one more surprise in store. Before I sign anything, I said, my voice gaining strength, there's something I want you to see. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small USB drive. What's that? Emily asked, her brow furrowed with suspicion. A little something I've been working on, I replied, plugging the drive into a laptop I had placed on the counter. The screen flickered to life, displaying a series of video files. What is this? Mark demanded, his voice laced with anger. The truth, I said, my eyes fixed on their faces. I clicked on the first video file. It showed Mark bribing Tom the inspector, handing him an envelope stuffed with cash in exchange for a false condemnation report. Mark's face paled. Emily gasped. The video played on, showing them discussing their plans to shut down my diner, their voices filled with malice and greed. I played another video, this one showing them intimidating my suppliers, threatening to ruin their businesses if they continued to work with me. Their faces were contorted with rage as they spewed insults and threats. The final video was a recording of a conversation they had in their car, unaware that I had planted a hidden microphone. In the recording, they gloated about their scheme, bragging about how they were going to get away with it. They'll never suspect a thing, Emily said in the recording. That old woman is too stupid to fight back. Mark laughed. We're going to be rich. As the videos played, their faces transformed from triumph to horror. They realized they had been caught, their lies exposed for all to see. They tried to stop the videos, to shut down the laptop, but it was too late. The truth was out. Their arrogance had been their downfall. The police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. I had called them earlier, informing them of my plan. They were on their way to arrest Mark and Emily. You can't do this. Mark screamed, his face red with fury. We'll sue you. We'll destroy you. I simply smiled. The sirens grew louder, a symphony of justice arriving to silence their deceit. Mark lunged, attempting to rip the laptop from the counter, but I was ready. Years of flipping burgers and serving plates had given me more strength than he anticipated. I sidestepped his clumsy grab, letting him stumble against an overturned table. Emily, her face a mask of fury and desperation, screamed obscenities, a stark contrast to the polished businesswoman she pretended to be. The police burst through the diner doors, guns drawn, the flashing lights painting the scene in a chaotic swirl of red and blue. Mark and Emily were quickly subdued, their protests ignored as they were handcuffed and led away. As they were dragged past me, Mark locked eyes with me, his gaze filled with pure, unadulterated malice. This isn't over, Agatha, he snarled. I'll make you pay for this. I simply stared back, my expression unwavering. It is over, Mark, I said softly. It's finally over. The officers escorted them to the police cars, the crowd of onlookers growing larger with each passing second. The news had already spread like wildfire, the story of the wronged old woman and the greedy developers captivating the town. As the cars sped away, carrying Mark and Emily to their fate, a sense of quiet descended upon the diner. The silence was broken only by the flashing lights and the murmurs of the crowd. The news vans began to roll in, their cameras pointed at the diner, eager to capture the story. The following days were a whirlwind of media attention, legal proceedings, and community support. The story of my struggle against Mark and Emily became a national sensation, a symbol of the fight against corporate greed and injustice. I was interviewed by countless news outlets, my face plastered on every newspaper and television screen. People from all over the country reached out to me, offering their support, their encouragement, and their stories of their own battles against injustice. The outpouring of love and compassion was overwhelming, restoring my faith in humanity. The legal case against Mark and Emily was swift and decisive. The evidence was overwhelming, the videos irrefutable, and their crimes undeniable. They were charged with bribery, fraud, conspiracy, and a host of other offenses. The judge threw the book at them, sentencing them to the maximum penalties allowed by law. Mark and Emily's empire crumbled. Their reputation was ruined, their assets were seized, and their freedom was taken away. They lost everything, their arrogance and greed ultimately leading to their downfall. The diner, once slated for demolition, became a symbol of hope and resilience. The community rallied together to restore it to its former glory, volunteering their time, their skills, and their resources. The grand reopening was a celebration of justice, a testament to the power of community, and a victory over greed and corruption. The diner became more than just a restaurant, it became a sanctuary, a place where people could gather, share stories, and find comfort in the knowledge that even in the darkest of times, hope can prevail. As I stood behind the counter, flipping burgers and serving plates, I felt a sense of peace and contentment I hadn't felt in years. The diner was buzzing with life, filled with the laughter of children, the chatter of friends, and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. The nightmare was finally over. Justice had been served. I had faced my demons, fought for what was right, and emerged victorious. The scars of the battle remained, a reminder of the pain I had endured, but they also served as a symbol of my strength, my resilience, and my unwavering determination. I looked around at the smiling faces, the vibrant atmosphere, and the sense of community that filled the diner, and I knew that I had made the right choice. I had chosen to fight, to expose the truth, and to reclaim my life. And in doing so, I had inspired others to do the same. I received letters from people all over the country, thanking me for giving them hope, for showing them that even the smallest voice can be heard, and for reminding them that justice is always worth fighting for. It was a long and arduous journey, filled with pain, fear, and uncertainty. But in the end, it was worth it. The diner was saved, the community was united, and Mark and Emily were brought to justice. They lost everything. I just smiled. Revenge isn't sweet. It's necessary. Would you have done the same? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for more justice.